I figured I'd talk about the notion of states' rights in America right now because there's a bit of drama going on. There's a debate hosted by Polypop between the Amazing Atheist and Southern Avenger, and they were talking about the place of state rights in our country. Now, for those of you who aren't from America or you just don't know anything about politics, quick background. There's 50 states in America, and on a lot of issues, each individual state can choose what they want to do. They don't necessarily have to follow with what the country wants to do. Some examples are, in California, you can have medical marijuana. If you have some sort of medical purposes, you can get it, even though that's not available in all 50 states. Another example is in New York, if you're a same-sex couple, you can get married, even though the majority of states don't allow that. That's because of state rights. Here in America, a big issue is how relevant should states' rights be in our active legislating? Should they be the overarching power? And that's what a lot of libertarian types like to promote, the idea that states' rights are most important. And I do find what Southern Avenger says here to be very interesting because, like he says, states' rights do defend a lot of states from enforcing policies that they don't necessarily agree with. If your state wants a gay marriage but the country says no, you can still go with it anyway. But if you take away states' rights, you can't do that anymore, right? Because the idea is, in the national legislation, people are going to vote whatever they want. It doesn't matter to what that group specific wants. The notion behind states' rights is that each culture is only ready for something when it's ready for it, and they aren't going to vote for something until they want it. But with the notion of states' rights, or even if you want to go smaller, say, I don't know, county rights or city rights or neighborhood rights, I guess, as each group is ready, they can go for it as they want. For example, I remember when North Carolina passed the ban on gay marriage, there were a few regions, or counties, I guess, that said, no, we don't want to pass this. And I believe the studies actually show that those were the most educated regions of North Carolina. Those regions might be ready for gay marriage, they might want it, but because the whole state wants gay marriage, that didn't work out. So even though they may want it, they can't because the state overall is enforcing that policy. So that might sound kind of stupid, but when you apply that to the national level, does that apply also? In the end, I can't say that I support state rights in this situation. And it might sound bad, like, hey, why don't you support the state's ability to pass good legislation? And I am glad that they can pass good legislation, but the thing is, they can pass bad legislation also. And, that might be a bit tentative or relative. What does bad mean? What I mean by bad is you get to choose, or you don't get to choose what you want to do with yourself. Someone is oppressing your specific rights. For example, if a state decided to vote that women can no longer vote in that state, or that they no longer have an equal position in the marriage, like they have to be subservient to the man, they can't have their financial independence, etc. If you're in a situation where you can vote on what rights people have, you're essentially in a situation where two wolves and a sheep are voting on what they're going to eat for dinner. The sheep is probably going to vote for like a flower or something, and two wolves are going to vote for the sheep. You might say, that's horrible because the sheep is being discriminated against. But you're like, no, that's legislation, it's democracy. And I'm all for democracy. I think it's a good thing to let people decide what direction their community can go. But I think it draws a line at oppressing people, like saying what rights this minority group cannot have. I don't feel like that's something that the state should be able to legislate. But then you might ask, hey, does that mean that the federal government can legislate that? No. I feel like oppressing people's rights or their individual ability to live the way they want is unconstitutional. I know that that notion of something being unconstitutional is kind of bullshit at this point in this country because a lot of people don't really seem to care about how that works, but I do think ideally that it should apply. The notion of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We should all have the capability to live our lives the way we want and do whatever it takes to make us happy so long as we aren't destroying the ability of others to do the same. And I feel like if you're voting on whether or not certain people have these rights or the ability to find happiness in their life, you're essentially doing that. You're stopping their ability to enjoy themselves. So I think that liberty stops there. Your liberty stops when you're stopping other people from doing what they want. The funny thing is, most people who would advocate voting state by state whether or not gays have equal rights probably wouldn't advocate voting state by state whether African Americans have equal rights. Like, hey, should we have slavery again? Most people say, no, that's horrible, you can't vote on that. And some people might say, oh, well, nobody supports slavery anymore. You'd be surprised, though. Especially in the South, there's a lot of racist people. And I understand that racism is kind of dying down, at least on the so-in-your-face level. but it's still out there, and it could grow at some point. What if a state decides to vote to put slavery back? Can that happen? Can the state personally decide that they want to oppress a group's rights? If not, then why does the same thing apply to homosexuality? Why can a state decide that a same-sex couple cannot get a marriage in that situation? Finally, I watched one of Southern Avenger's videos, which was a response to the Amazing Atheist video talking about state rights, where Southern Avenger said that TJ supporting the notion that states' rights shouldn't be relevant is similar to Rick Santorum saying that states' rights shouldn't be relevant. Because, hey, they both say that the states shouldn't be able to decide these things for themselves. But there's a difference. Rick Santorum isn't doing it for the fact of personal liberty, like people get to do what they want. He wants to force people to obey laws, even if that's not the way that they want to live their lives. He wants to impose national legislation that tells you who you can or cannot marry, or what you can or cannot put in your body, or what you can or cannot do with yourself. While TJ believes that the government has no place in that. It shouldn't tell you who you should be able to marry, what drugs you can or can't take, etc., etc. You get to decide for yourself, and the Constitution and the federal government should defend that. It's not about people voting. Oh, well, what if the federal government votes that you can't do it? It's not about that. Nobody should be voting on that. Who should be voting whether or not gay people have the right to marry? Nobody should be voting on that. That's not an issue that should be voted on. That's a right that should be protected on the basis of freedom, which our country is based on. So in the end, yes, I do agree with the Amazing Atheist on this issue. It doesn't matter how you break down the voting group, whether it's national, state, county, city, or whatever. It doesn't matter how small you get. If other people are capable of saying that you can't do something in your life because they just don't want you to, there is a problem. That is a problem because it interferes with your ability to live your life the way you want. And nobody should be able to vote on that. It's not who can vote on that or how many people are going to vote that. Nobody should be voting on that. That should be your personal right. And anybody who says that any form of government can say what you do with your life so long as you're not hurting anybody is a bad government, in my humble opinion. In the end, I can't really say I support gay rights. I mean, no, I do support gay rights. Yay! Yay for the gays. Yay. Yay. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm awkward. I don't have a girlfriend. Did you guess?